Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're back with me today. It's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead, and we are reading the book Dooger, the Grasshopper Hound. So, yesterday we read chapter 3, A Stranger Called Bones, and that was a boy. He was tall, but very, very thin, that was with nails abbased. And at the end of the story, DJ and his friends were all at church, and DJ looked out the church window before it started, and he saw a new column of smoke go up. The firebug has hit again. So he's got an idea for how they might capture the firebug, but even that has scared him enough that he shivered. So today we're going to start chapter 4. Sometimes nothing works right. DJ was restless through Sunday school. He heard the air tankers take off, passing over the church with the thunder of engines as they climbed above the mountains. DJ couldn't see out of the window until Sunday school ended. Mrs. Stagg taught the class. Today we're going to talk about patience. She began, smiling warmly at everyone. Do any of us ever need patience? Alfred raised his hand. I need patience with my little brother Tag. DJ hadn't thought of it before, but he was really upset with Pris. His little stepsister had been making his life miserable since their parents had got married in April. She was always getting into his room and looking through his things. He didn't like it. But when she messed up his writing, he felt angry. David? Only Brother Paul, Mrs. Stagg used his name instead of his initials. Sometimes when his mother was upset with him, she would call him David Jonathan Dillon. But everybody else called him DJ, which he liked. Now he realized Mrs. Stagg had repeated his name a couple of times before he was even conscious of it. Yes? He asked, bringing his mind back to the present. We were talking about the need for patience. If you prepared your lesson for today, you must have a verse to share with us, have you? The writer in DJ showed himself. Yes, and I looked up in the King James Concordance. The word patience doesn't appear in the Old Testament at all, but only in the New Testament. And when I looked up the same verse in other translations, I found some use the word endurance or perseverance. Really? Mrs. Stagg asked. I hadn't known that. David, you always keep a teacher on her toes. But I'm glad you checked them out. Now, what verse would you like to share? DJ wanted to share how his new stepsister tried his patience beyond anything he could remember. But instead, he opened his mother's Bible to the marker he placed there the night before. Jesus said in Luke 8:15 that we should bring forth fruit with patience. Mrs. Stagg complimented DJ and went on with the lesson, showing how everyone could apply patience in daily living. When the bell rang, ending the class, DJ and Alfred hurried to the side door of the little church to check out the fire. They shaded their eyes against the sun's glare. The distant column of smoke was darker now and spreading across Stony Ridge. Alfred pointed. Here come 2 more planes back to reload, and there go 2 more that have just refilled. Looks like a bad fire, DJ said. Lots of trees going up in it, not to count all the wild animals that will die. I sure hope there aren't any campers or hikers back in that area. Yeah, and I'm glad it's way off because it's burning this way. See the smoke? Alfred turned back into the church. My father says that the way this town is laid out, if a forest fire ever got out of control and the wind was right, Stony Ridge wouldn't stand a chance. How's he know that? See how the town rests in this canyon with forests and mountains on both sides? Puts us in kind of a ditch or a trough. Winds caused by the fire on either side of that range would be sucked through the valley where we live. If the flames leaped towards the town at the southeast end, the way winds usually blow this time of year, we'd have fire on all sides of us. Of course, burning embers would fall on our buildings. They're mostly wood, and Dad says they would turn the whole area into a giant blowtorch. It'd turn everything in this town to a cinder. DJ shuddered. That's really scary. At the mill where he works, the bosses try to figure out the worst things that could happen so they know how to fight them if they did. Well, let's hope it never comes to that. Anyway, I can hardly wait to start that story for the paper. Me too, but I'd rather have that pup trained to follow a trail. Boy, talk about the need for patience. Let's try him tomorrow morning, DJ suggested. Just before noon the next day, the friends flopped down against the old canyon in the city park and looked at Dooger. DJ shook his head. Alfred, that hound pup is the most mixed up dog I've ever seen. He can do everything except the one thing he's supposed to do, follow a trail. Alfred pushed his glasses with his right thumb. I've been thinking. Do you suppose that's why the people who had him before dumped him out along the road? DJ frowned. Hard to say. I wonder if people realize what a terrible thing it is to dump a pet out in the country to shift for himself. So many terrible things can happen to them, including getting killed. But people do it all the time. I'll bet I'm right. Somebody gave up on training this pup and just dumped him. He sure doesn't seem to be good for trailing anything, except grasshoppers. Both boys turned around. Nails and his friend Bones were grinning from behind the blue spruce the city had imported in for the city park. Nails' friend slapped his friend on the shoulder. But around here, there's not much a calling for following grasshoppers, huh, Bones? DJ nudged Alfred. Come on, let's go. Bones grinned, his thin mouth showing crooked yellow teeth. What's your hurry? He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Bones explained, doctor's orders. He paused, winked, and added, I'm the doctor. DJ picked up Dooger in his arms as Bones pulled a wooden kitchen match from his pocket. He struck it with his thumb as DJ and Alfred moved down the sidewalk. DJ said, You know, I'm trying hard not to judge, but I don't like that Bones guy any better than Nails. Alfred agreed. Wonder who he is and where he's from. I wish this pup would follow him. Then we'd find out. Alfred stopped suddenly and snapped his fingers. Hey, I've got an idea. Come on. As they hurried towards Alfred's home at the edge of the small town, he exclaimed. They'd gathered up the books he borrowed from the library and checked out some new ones on training bloodhounds. The boys snapped a chain to Dodger's collar and attached the other end of the chain to the wire clothesline. so the dog could have more freedom to move around. Then the boys hurried downtown. As they entered the small building on Main Street that had once been a retail store, Mrs. Franklin looked up from her desk at the front library. "I wonder who has walked off with my whole library," she greeted them with a hint of a teasing smile. "Between you two boys checking out my library books, I don't have enough for my other patrons." "These are all Alfred's," DJ exclaimed, sliding his stack onto the desk. "We'd like to trade these in." "Yeah," Alfred said, pushing his armload forward. "Something on training bloodhounds." Mrs. Franklin didn't fit the usual picture of a librarian. She was a grandmother, but her hair was dyed bright blonde. Her hazel eyes glittered with hints of fun and mischief. "Oh," she said innocently, "I thought you wanted something on training grasshopper hounds." The boys exchanged glances. DJ said, "Why do you say that?" "Oh, I heard it someplace," she said, leading the way down the walls lined with inexpensive pine bookshelves. "Nell's Abbess," Alfred exclaimed. "He's the one who said that to you." "Actually," Mrs. Franklin replied, running her long fingers along the books, "I heard it from the checker at the mercantile store. I don't know where she heard it." When the boys walked out with several books on dog training, Alfred was fuming. "That Nell's Abbess is going to make us the laughing stock of Stony Ridge." "Can't blame him," DJ said slowly. "It's up to us to train that pup and then find out what he can do best." The boys returned to the park after making sure Nails and Bones weren't around. DJ took a stack of books and Alfred took the rest. They leaned against the spoked wheels of the old canyon and read for an hour. The books were disappointing because most of the information the boys already knew. They went home that night fighting discouragement over Dooger. They decided to take a break the next day and do DJ's story on the forestry department. The next afternoon, DJ and Alfred stood outside the air-conditioned building that housed the California Department of Forestry Emergency Command Center at Stony Ridge. Russ Flane, who was an off-duty dispatcher, showed them around. He wore a short-sleeved shirt with dark pants. When the newspaper editor called and asked us if it was okay for you to do a story, DJ, we decided it would be good for kids to read about what happens when a fire starts in these mountains. So we're very happy to have you look around. Besides, I used to try doing a little writing myself, and I'd like to meet another aspiring author." DJ was flattered. "Thanks," he said. He pulled out a pencil and a tablet of yellow-lined news note paper. Alfred asked, "Is it okay for me to take pictures?" He held up an instant camera he'd borrowed from his mother. "Of course, Alfred. Now, let me give you a quick overview, and then I'll answer your questions." One wall was covered with a board marked with all kinds of information. Below the board was a control panel with microphones. "It's a little bit like a chess game a giant might play," Mrs. Flat explained. "You boys play chess?" They shook their heads. DJ said, "I saw it in a movie once." "Me too," Alfred added. "Well, boys, our chessboard has just under 800,000 acres of timber, brush, and dry grass. But instead of little chessmen, we use fire engines, bulldozers, and people, plus airplanes." DJ had been studying how to write short stories long enough that he saw a comparison. It's sort of like writing, he said. There are only three kinds of conflict: people against people, people against themselves, like a fight inside your head, and people against things, like nature or fire. Very good, DJ. You and I must have read the same book somewhere. Well, in this case, our bad guy isn't a person, it's fire. It's fast, tough to beat, and can't be predicted. But addition to the physical danger of firefighting, we also have conflict inside ourselves. It's called tension. And other people, DJ added quickly, like the firebug. Ah, yes, the mysterious arsonist. We don't know who he is or why he's setting the fires this summer, or where he'll strike next. It's especially bad to have some guy around like this in the driest season we've had in years. And the fire season runs through October. At least that's the so-called declared fire season. The boys moved on. DJ's lead pencil was moving rapidly across sheet after sheet of paper as their guide explained things. It's mighty hot outside, which is rare for this altitude. That means how high up they were. But in that heat, we've got nearly 1,000 men fighting fires. Mr. Flan showed a colored magnet placed on the board. This is the Northeast Tri-County Ranger Unit, where we've got several blazes to fight at once. We can move these magnets around so we can see what we have in any particular place, like crews, equipment, fire trucks, air tankers, and so forth, who's fighting fires both inside and around our Ranger unit. Over there, he continued, we've got 29,000 acres burning near Reno. Now, that's across a straight line, of course, but is still a concern to us. Down here in the valley below the Sierras, 7,000 acres have already burnt near Cobalt Spring. And over here and here and here, we've got smaller fires to fight. So there and there and there. D-Day whistled. What about the one yesterday? Alfred and I saw the smoke and heard the airplanes. The CDF firefighters got control of that one before nightfall. CDF? DJ asked. California Department of Forestry. Mr. Flad pointed to the uniform jacket suspended from a coat hanging by the hanger on the door. That's our emblem on the shoulder patch. TJ was excited. Boy, think of the stories I could write about this place. There's no shortage of stories, all right. But don't forget to include the inner tension that goes along with this job. Such as, DJ prompted, well, where to send men and equipment. Expecting one fire will be controlled while another may get worse. Like, where do we get reinforcements? And what happens if we guess wrong and pull men and equipment out to fight at another place only to have the first fire get out of control? Whew. Alfred said, good thing you've got all that radio equipment. It's the very latest, but it all comes down to human beings in the end. Human decisions, human errors, which is mistakes, human suffering, and sometimes even loss of human lives, not to mention all the birds and animals that die so terribly. Their guide showed them around until the boys were bursting with information. As they started back for the front door, Mr. Flan had a final thought. We need to see the dorm rooms and mess hall at the ranger station. There, firefighters can have a sort of home away from home while they're in this area. Both men and women now serve in the permanent CDF, California Department of Forestry, workforce of 3,000 to 5,000 additional workers who help out during the fire season. You should visit a fire outlook station like Lobo Peak, and you'll certainly see the local air attack base where the tankers are serviced. Both boys thanked their guide. They shook hands and turned to go. DJ paused, his hand on the door handle. What about the firebug? I mean, what causes people to do terrible things like that? The guide shrugged. We hear all kind of reasons and theories. Sometimes it's somebody who's not quite right in the head. Often it's somebody who has a grudge and wants to get even with somebody else. What about the one who's setting fires around here? Your guess is as good as mine. Of course, our authorities are trying to catch up to him and stop him. But we've got an awful lot of timber, and one person can hide out very easily. Well, good luck with your story, DJ. So long, Alfred. Send me a copy of your story and your pictures. The boys walked into the boiling summer heat. The heat hit them so hard they automatically stepped back into the shade of the command central building. Wow, Alfred exclaimed. I sure hate to be fighting a fire in this heat. Me too, DJ agreed. Well, I've got to start writing my story. But when it's cooler, let's take the red pup and train him a little before dark. Good idea. Maybe we can turn up a clue about the firebug. Wouldn't that make a good story to go along with the rest of what you're doing? Sure would. That's called a sidebar in journalism. Well, see you in a little while. DJ entered the house and called out, but nobody answered. He went down the hallway to his room and stopped dead still. All the stories he'd written over the last couple of years were scattered across the floor. That Priss! DJ cried. Now she's gone too far. Oh, why does she keep doing that? Well, that's the end of chapter 4. So even though he's worked really hard, sometimes nothing works out. And that's how he felt when he saw that big mess in his room. Tomorrow we'll be reading a surprise discovery about the fires. So they're going to find out something. I wonder what it will be. Well, that's all for now. I wanted to remind you, I love you, I really do. But more importantly, God loves you, and He always will. So I hope you have a good rest of your day or your night, whenever you're listening to this. And always remember, you are important. You are loved. All right, have a good night. Bye-bye.